Hello everyone, welcome back to an Everyone's Adventure outdoor education podcast for teachers. Back here doing another episode on a topic which you guys have asked for. And the topic is all about plan, do and review, which is a really popular kind of review or reflection model used for people who are going through loads of different activities. It doesn't just have to be outdoor activities, it can be for tasks on general day-to-day jobs as well. I'm joined by Andy, and we're just going to have a quick discussion about where it can, what the model actually is, and the different elements in each section, and how we can use it to the best possible way when providing these outdoor activities, which you can find inside the teacher's toolbox, but also some of your general kind of curriculum lessons as well. So within your English lessons, maybe your maths lessons, and even PE. So Cobb's learning cycle is the other name for it, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
The reduced model is plan, do and review.
Mm-hmm.
There is a more complex model. It's only got one more element into it, which is plan, do, review and implement. It's based on front loading the session, so having the information that we're of the actual plan, do, review, implement cycle before you take part in the actual doing bit of the activity. So, for example, in our way, if we were going to build a bridge across a creek, the idea is that we would front load the session and say, right, it's going to take you a couple of attempts and for you to get better, here's a plan, do, and review model. Would you agree with that?
It's something that we naturally do anyway. Plan, do, review. That's a really nice thing that's about the model. When we work with groups previously, it's something that we do front load and sort of bring up before a greater task. It's something that you can really draw out of a group earlier on. It's something that they do. We all do it in every challenge that we come across. And it's even more pronounced when we work with groups, because if we don't follow the cycle, we don't progress. So any challenge in which any team is progressing through a challenge, through failure, and then achievement, they are doing the plan, do, review. So it's one of those that you can bring it up really nice and easily with some basic challenges, and then from there, just highlighting it for groups when they go into bigger challenges so that they can refine key elements of it. And that's the real beauty of the Cobb cycle, is actually the cycle in a whole is innate, it's something that we do, but when we can make ourselves aware of it, we can look at more nuanced aspects of each of the cycles, and that's where our development in working in teams and even in ourselves comes from.
Yeah, definitely. So the whole idea that this is a brilliant, really simple, brilliant, very quick, very easy to remember kind of model for a task which is going to take you multiple attempts. It pairs really nicely with some of the activities that you'll find in the teacher's toolbox, which are progressive, meaning that each stage that you complete, there's another rule that gets implemented, so it makes it a little bit more difficult. And that links really nicely to the Cobb's learning cycle. There's other models which are very similar to it. You have use, recycle. What's the other one? The 3 R's. You have reduce, reuse, recycle, which is basically comes back to the Cobb's learning cycle of how to use it, how to get the most efficient result.
Yeah.
It's boiling down after you've gone through the process of plan, do, review and implement. It also links on really nicely to another one we like to use really well, which is the DOC cycle, the drive, organisation and cohesion. So all of these kind of models interlink into one another. If we break down the actual bits though, for people to understand, the planning section, if you just for example used any of our activities inside Teacher's Toolbox, there is a pre-activity section, and so that pre-activity section gives you all the information you should give the group. So all the information they will need to plan their attempt at the activity. And there's loads of ways that can take place, isn't there? Group discussion, you could have, if you had a big kind of almost graphed paper, you could have a thought bubble in the middle and come up with a few ideas. There's loads of different ways to come across the differences of planning their activity.
Anytime a group takes on an activity or a challenge, and particularly in large groups, there has to be some sort of construct of a plan before action can take place. Now, say for example you're working with a group and they are doing a spider's web. For those that don't understand what spider's web is, it's two trees, some bungee in between the trees or posts that creates a giant spider's web. The team have got to move through that spider's web with a certain set of parameters. Let's say for this example, they've got to move through the spider's web without touching the spider's web. Maybe they get a limit of 3 touches before they reset, and each hole can only be used once or twice. Now, before the group can action anything, there has to be some level of plan. The plan can just be as simple as the agreement to start doing the activity.
I'm going first.
Yeah, but there has to be some sort of plan.
Yeah.
Like we're going for it, or can we have a practice, or there's many different examples you can have, but there has to be some sort of plan before they can begin. So that's the planning aspect of the spider's web, and then of the combe cycle. And there's different nuances of how we can plan, different ways that plans can affect us. But initially, in the combe cycle, what we're saying to groups and yourselves, and we're all agreeing, is that before any group takes part in a challenge, there is a planning phase.
Yeah. How simple, how complex.
I've worked with groups and it's gone on for an hour, and you're like, right guys, we've got to actually start doing some stuff.
Yeah.
You work with some groups and it's 1 second, it's like, I'm going to go first, or I'm going to start, or shall we just give it a go and see what happens. But there is some sort
of plan. Yeah. And then it comes to the actual doing side of stuff, which is a fairly self-explanatory part of it. It's either their first, second, third, fourth, however many attempts, it's them actually actioning from the information that they've created from their plan.
Yeah. I say action's a really nice word for it. It's like there's a physical action.
Yeah.
And whenever we're talking about the plan and do review model, you can't, or the combe cycle, you can't critique planning without an action.
Yes.
So as soon as there's a planning, there's an action. You can't. That is the main part of the challenge. That's the main aspect.
Because that do bit is almost evidencing the strengths and some of the weaknesses from the plan, and without evidencing what's going on through actual action, it's quite difficult. You watch a few groups, especially in that planning phase, which some people almost go through the cycle in their head a couple of times, and they find faults in it, but without actually trying and seeing whether those faults are an actual thing, or whether they're just a hypothetical thing that they kind of constructed in their head. You don't know whether it's going to work or not. And sometimes, especially with some of the activities you find in the Teacher's Toolbox, the simplest answer is the answer. And it's the fact that the team surrounding the activity trying to overcomplicate things, which is the bit which is making it really difficult. So that do bit's a very, very strong part. And it's most of the time, especially the stuff that you're going to find on the Teacher's Toolbox, that's the fun bit. So the planning, with a lot of the stuff that you'll find on the Teacher's Toolbox, I would suggest, or I would presume, would be quite a quick thing, because people are like, right, I want to do the activity, that looks fun, let's do it. So the doing bit is going to be the draw, is going to be the carrot on the stick, if you will, as you go through.
It's the natural bit. So it's like, as soon as you introduce a challenge to a group, action, there will be some level of planning, but the action phase is the phase, the doing phase is the phase that is naturally going to show itself, and it's going to be the strongest aspect. That's the most sort of, other than sort of safety and sort of general well-being for the group, it's the thing that's most sort of naturally driven by a group, especially if they've not come across combe cycle before, plan, do, review before. It's the strongest natural element for groups to focus on.
Yeah, it's a really, really powerful, very simple and easy to remember part. So we've done the plan, we've done the action, and then it's the review part. And a lot of people get hung up on this, thinking that we need to maybe draw out on some of the other resources which are in the teacher's toolbox to make it a little bit more complex. But the plan, do, review cycle, the combe cycle, has been created to be as simple as possible. And in this, for instance, the review part is the do bit didn't quite go as well as our plan was hoping it would go. So maybe we were building the bridge, maybe we got one person across before the bridge fell apart, and now we've lost the resources, we've got to reset. Or for the spider's web, we got through, but we hit 4 times instead of the 3 times. So the review part would be, right, okay, we almost got there, these are the good bits. What are the bits that we need to change for it to be successful on our next attempt? And it's very much just an active review. It's not it can be, I suppose. It could be a sit down, talk about it, set up a circle, maybe doing a step in, step out type thing. Or it can be, if you want to keep the flow going, and definitely get the students to do the reviewing and the implementing.
The review is, I guess, as a provider, it's or as a teacher, it's a guidance phase for us, and very much a self-led part. The review is probably the most key part to an experience, especially if we're looking at progressional experiences where we're going into the next bit and the next bit and the next bit, or higher challenges. But it's very much a student or participant or team member based experience, and like the more the review can be self driven, the more groups really get out of it. The review phase is really the key bit that I think combe cycle highlights to start off with. When we first introduce it to a group, the planning comes naturally, the action comes naturally. The review, again, there's always a natural level of review. You've succeeded or you've not succeeded. But to really bring the awareness to the participants that the challenge doesn't end when the action phase ends. The reviewing part is in equal importance to the 2 other parts of combe cycle, until you add the implementing phase, which is obviously equally important to the 4. But that is in the traditional way that I look at it, that they are sort of linked together.
You've probably experienced it in your classes, and you've definitely experienced it on your sessions. If we were running, for example, just taking something out of the teacher's toolbox, a waste disposal, which is a bucket in the middle of a circle which the students can't enter the circle, and they get given a couple of pieces of rope, and as a team they need to lift and move the bucket out of the contamination circle and into a safety spot, which is usually a couple of meters away. But you'll notice there'll be a couple of people who have the kind of the louder roles within the group, the more dominant, the more leadership roles within the group. and you'll watch them have the same plan, and they do it over and over and over and over and over again, expecting a different result, and they get more and more and more frustrated as they're going along. The review part of the combe learning cycle, which is brilliant, and definitely why it should be front loaded, is the idea that the doing bit didn't go as the plan expected it to. So what do we need to change in the plan to make the doing bit right? It makes the group stop even for a second, highlight as a group, why did this not work, have a couple of different ideas, and then put into motion what the next part of their plan is going to be.
I think it's a really key element as well when you're looking at the review cycle is we always have a tendency to focus on the bits that didn't work and the negative parts of a plan or an action. And combe cycle is it's a learning model. It's a model of how we learn through challenging experience as a team. That's basically what it is. But keeping a positive element on it is really crucial. When we go to the review phase, in every plan and every action, there's positive parts. It's like if we've created some sort of a plan, there's some positive energy moving that group forward to completing the task. In the action, as long as they're not stood there not doing anything, there is some positive action that's happened in that group. And then in the review model, it's really focusing on the things that worked, really well, and how do we increase what's worked well. I can, especially when I first started working with groups, sort of 10 years ago, first started using this model, I very much sort of naturally I'm aware now that I naturally got drawn to this bit was wrong. This needs to be picked up in the review. We need to make this work better. How do we change our plan to make this not happen, or we fix this problem and then we'll do the action and then we fixed it. And the next lot of action, oh look, another problem's come up, right? And it's a never-ending spiral. You can just keep going because you're always going to find some sort of problem with every activity you do, because no team or person performs 100% perfectly. There's always some level of criticism that you can find. But if you put a positive spin on it and go, right, what do we do really well, or really putting that focus in the group of like what worked, what was brilliant. What happens if more attention is put on that positive thing? What happens if we can increase the level that we were doing that to a higher level? What else can we use that thing that we were using to do really well with this particular challenge? How can we use that to make other things in the challenge better? And that's a big thing with the review model, is because we are putting attention on the fact that we do these things naturally. Each team will plan naturally, each team will action do naturally, each team will review naturally. What we're doing is we're allowing this model to be made aware of the whole team, so we can all share in that experience. And as we're sharing in that experience, we can choose to look at it in different ways. And one of the really key points that I found working with, or being made aware of the model myself and then helping other people sort of be aware of that model, is the nuance of looking for the positivity in the review. That's a really key element I found, because once we look for the positivity, the enthusiasm for the plan and the action is always higher.
Well, that's the whole idea, isn't it? We're doing these activities to make a positive impact and make sure that everyone is enjoying themselves. And if we start focusing just on those negatives, when you go to do the next activity, people are going to think negatively before it, because we've just spent 10 minutes talking about how you've not done this to this level and you haven't done this to this level, but rather than going, Ben, I really like the way you did this. Sheila, you did fantastic with your enthusiasm and keeping everyone positive. And it makes it, and boiling back down to the whole thing is, the challenge is there to help them develop socially and emotionally, and within a framework of being social with the other people around you. So
and just to become aware of natural processes that happen as you work with groups all through your life anyway, and the more you can work with these in a positive way to benefit others, that will be reciprocated within yourself, and that's an experience that we want to share with all people, because it's key for us all performing well as a total team.
yeah, and so the plan, do, and review is the reduced model of the combe cycle, and that's where you'll probably finish with most of the stuff which is found within the outdoor curriculum within the school. They mention the combe cycle as their review cycle, as a learning cycle, and it is those 3 points written in a really nice circle with arrows pointing to each one of them. There is an expanded version which, as we've already mentioned, has one last little bit, which is implement. So it is simply getting everything that we've learned and we've noted down from our original plan, our doing and our reviewing, coming up with a secondary plan and then implementing it in our next do. Which then turns the circle into a bit of a 6. It's planned and it comes down. You'll see on the attached document below this what it looks like as it goes through. But this learning cycle, this review cycle, is really, really easy to remember, but also is quite powerful. Especially if you're getting people to do a self-led experience. If you're getting the pupils in smaller groups or maybe in a class size doing an activity and thinking of ways of how they could improve it, whether it's whatever parameters you put in, by making it quicker, making the activity more difficult, whatever parameters you put in. It's about them thinking within a group, implementing and doing, and then reviewing as they're going along. And it's a really easy tool for you guys to be able to use on your activity. Anything you want to mention? Oh, actually, just on that bit, as the actual provider, the planning element of it, for example, if you're using something out of our teacher's toolbox, the planning part of it would be front loading the session, wouldn't it? So the idea of being like, hey guys, we're going to be providing this activity, all right? And this activity is going to get progressively difficult. So each time you complete a level, I'm going to make it more difficult for you. And I would like you to use maybe this framework, the plan, do, review framework. And that would be your input to the group on the plan section of it.
Yeah.
Then when it comes to the doing part of it, you're very hands off. You're obviously got to be there in the idea that you're going to have to facilitate groups, make sure they've got all the equipment they need, and also make sure that everyone's staying safe and is following the rules of it. But you're very much a hands off approach at that point. And then when it comes to the reviewing part of it, personally, if I like to take a more hands off approach and just step in and go, think about the positives. Oh, have you thought about this? Oh, Sheila, what did you think? That kind of thing. Just skirting around the edges, and then ask them what they've come up with what their new plan is. And sometimes I also like to ask what the difference is between their new plan and their old plan was, just so we can highlight some of the differences that they've created to solidify them in the group's kind of understanding before they take on the part. It's quite a hands-off approach when I use the combe cycle. Do you use it in any other kind of way?
When I introduced the combe cycle to a group, and we're using it for the sort of first time whilst being aware that we're using it. I think one of my main roles within that experience is just to show them where each point is starting and which point is stopping. So I like to define right, we're in a planning phase, and to make a thing of it. It's like, right, we've done our plan now. We're now into our actioning, and then the same as when we get to the review, like, finish our actioning. Let's let's have our review. And it's to create and hold the space for groups to do those things. That's very much what my role as a facilitator in introducing comp cycles to do is, you guys are going to do it naturally. I'm just here to remind you that it's there, but to hold the space as a team that people can play and learn and practice in those spaces. And then just there to help guide and draw out things that people maybe want to say but aren't used to having this space for them to talk about a review. So, or to make a plan. It's maybe not, it's something that's a bit strange. The action phase is maybe a little bit more common, but then again, the challenges might be stuff that they've never come across before. So, just really allowing the group to have the space that they can take this on board and drawing the positives out of it, allowing it to be a positive experience, then thinking about these things, and then allowing there to be repetition afterwards is really important, so that you do introduce the fact that this cycle does create evolution, it does create change in performance if we look at it in the right way, and it's allowing that to happen in the team. But the more, like all these activities, the more input, the more freedom the group have, the more choice that they have within learning about this cycle, the more I feel they get from it. So allowing them to choose their level of challenge instead of enforcing a level of challenge on them, you'll see changes in their planning and their reviewing, because those things are having to happen because they're choosing their level of challenge. And it's a nice model because it's something we all do naturally, but it's simple enough that we can introduce it, and just the awareness of it happening allows us to open lots of different doors about talking about different things. As soon as you introduce the fact that, like, one of the aspects of the things that we're going to be doing today is reviewing. I mean, in your activity time, maybe if you spend a third of your time reviewing, that's strange. But actually, some of the largest amount of aha moments can happen in allowing that third of time to exist.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So it's just a really nice way that we can allow these things to happen, but the group understand. There's something more behind this, us standing around and doing a review, which is maybe a bit odd to what we would do normally, than just doing it for the whim of doing it. And that's the reason why the model is used by the outdoors. That's why it's used, and that's why it's so widely spread throughout the outdoors, because we do spend our time planning and doing and reviewing. We're not just here to do the doing.
Yeah.
Because the aha moments, the little gems, the sparks of inspiration, they tend to happen in the planning phase, or more so the reviewing phase. And it's just allowing the people to know that that's the participants to know that that's okay, and that's what we're here to do. And that's what I use the model. That's why I use the model. That's why I introduce the model to groups.
So, super simple to set up, really easy to remember. Below this video, you'll be able to get a printout and a download, just to kind of show you the condensed and then the expanded models. There will also be a activity that comes out in a couple of days' time along with this video. Hopefully, pretty much at the exact same time, they'll be uploaded onto the website. And that activity works perfectly with the plan, do, review model, almost like we've planned it that way. If you have any questions, there's a message box right at the bottom. Just click that one, send out your message, and we'll get back to you. Otherwise, have a lovely evening. Thank you very much for watching this video and downloading the audio file, and we will see you next month for another outdoor podcast for teachers. Bye.
Thank you.